Well, and I think one of the things that we've been talking about lately with like the Narnia books and the fantasy is just how beneficial it is sometimes to take yourself out of a real world example and put yourself into this like place where we can't bring our preconceived ideas. Mm-hmm. We don't understand what a land with talking animals could look like.
Right. Yeah.
And so we can like it like makes some of that stuff fall off.
That's good.
And allows us to just receive the world as they present it.
Welcome back to the Rooted Minds podcast, where we come together as a family to talk about books and learn more about ourselves and our emotions. And in today's podcast, Mom is going to be leading us, and we're going to be talking about this very special book, Anthony Browne's Voices in the Park.
Yes, thank you, Andy. And I love children's books because they present big ideas kind of in gentle ways, but Voices in the Park is just a cute little story that takes one idea, one event that happens, and you walk through 4 different perspectives on that same event. And it really is interesting how diverse the experience is for each of these 4 people.
Yeah.
In a simple thing like going to the park.
Wow.
It's so cool.
Yeah, and so like just the idea of having multiple perspectives being presented is a great tool for readers to learn how to see things through different lenses. So let's talk about like who were the voices in the park that we meet.
Well, we have the mother, the woman character that has a son and a dog.
And so what is she like?
She's a little nervous about the environment around her. She's kind of like always watching to see what might be dangerous or harmful to her child.
Okay.
She's a little bit bothered by the other, like there's another dog that interacts with her dog and she's not super happy about it. And so that's like not like a danger factor, but just like a bother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she likes having things just as they are.
In order.
And that's her perspective on what going to the park
what that
should
feels
look
like.
like.
Yeah.
Honestly, like what is a good day at the park?
In her mind, that's her on the bench, her son on the bench, and her dog happy and
uninterrupted, unbothered.
uninterrupted and unbothered. Yeah.
There's no chaos. Everything is
Right.
under control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then we meet the son. Do we switch to the son next? Yeah. And he is kind of the opposite, where he's very carefree and he's like looking out into the world and kind of wishing to go like explore and
Quite
all these
lonely.
things. And he's lonely.
Yeah.
Because he's been staying in the house a lot, it seems. And so a day in the park for him
Is exciting.
is exciting because it's like new and fresh and what can we do?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he meets the little girl, and it's almost like he's trying to figure out what of his mom being like, I don't want to be interrupted, he should take on for himself, because he's a little hesitant about her at first, but
because she's a girl.
Because she's a girl.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so then we meet the dad. What's the dad like?
A whole separate, there's not a mom and a dad, they're 2 groups.
Right, this is a dad,
The dad
of
the
a different
girl.
household.
Of a
Yes.
different
Yes.
household, yes. And he is,
That was interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, because the tone completely changed. His perspective is like, he seems exhausted. Like he's looking for a job. He just wants to sit in peace for a minute and maybe look for a job.
And his is honestly the one with the fewest amount of words.
Yeah,
Right.
that's so true.
Few pages, few words.
Interesting.
Go to the park, read the paper, come back.
Yeah, it's kind of, it seems like it's a break for him.
Yeah.
Like his daughter can go play, and his dog is like out there with another dog, and he just has rest and peace to keep his worries to himself.
Yeah.
And then we meet the 4th character, which is the man's daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
And she is the most exuberant of all the characters.
Yes.
Yeah.
She is the one that is, making friends. She's initiating friendship with
Yeah.
the little boy
Having
and
fun.
having fun.
She's really, really happy.
She's really happy. And so one of the things that I think is really fun about the way that this book shares these 4 perspectives is that it changes the font for each character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it changes the artwork.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Like, the color schemes were changing, which is kind of like letting, like, a window into, like, how you perceive the world. Like, it's the tint.
Yeah.
Like, the dad, his perspective is very, like, dark, dull colors.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like
Yeah.
drab.
Versus his daughter, which is very bright. And
Yes.
Primary colors.
Yeah.
She's
And-
all primary colors.
Yeah. And not only were the colors bright, but the illustrations were fantastical and
Yeah.
wonder-filled. Like, there's this one illustration of when she interacts with her little friend's mom, and she was so mad because her dog got in the way of her dog, and, like, the illustration was, like, the hat is flying off of her head in anger, and but she also has, like, these flowers that are, like, coming out of her shirt, like,
like imagination.
yes,
If you could think of
just
imagination,
see
of what
so
that would
much
look like.
imagination in that illustration.
Yes.
And the little boys though, even though he's also a child, there's a lot of like monotone type of stuff in his life because his life feels pretty dull.
Feels
He's
pretty
lonely, constricted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's not any leaves on the trees. Whereas,
Right.
like, there's this one illustration where the little girl is talking to the little boy on the bench. And there's, like, a lamppost in between them. And on the one side of the lamppost is the boy's view and coloring, and all the trees are leafless. And on the girl's side, it's, like, bright and colorful. And there are these spring leaves on the trees. And it's just happy.
And I also noticed that, like, the further along you get in the boy's story, the more color he gets because he's with the little girl that's... Because, like, they take off their jackets and all of a sudden, like, there's more bright colors.
It was
and
fun.
Interesting.
There's
Yeah.
just so much intentionality into the way this
Really?
book was
Yeah.
made.
It's kind of unexpected, but it was so powerful to convey the emotion and like the vibe for each person.
Right. And what a great tool to use to help build, just the idea of relational emotions and complexity. Like how different people can be triggered by different environments or events and perceive them in such a different way. I mean, I'm sure we've had experiences or a trip or something that we've taken that we all like just see in a different way. Like a trip to the beach for me is like packing all the stuff and thinking through all the food we're gonna make and finding the hotel, and maybe for Dad it's like where are the finances and what route are we gonna take, and is the car ready or do we need to rent a car?
Exactly.
And what do you guys think? We're going to the beach.
Exactly. Like,
All the fun you're gonna
fun.
have. Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna hunt for seashells. Oh, we're gonna do boogie boarding. Oh, we're gonna build sandcastles.
That is interesting. As you're talking, it makes me think too. Our imagination of a upcoming event are even different than the actual experience. They're both different. Like, these people were in the park, and you're sort of walking through it with them as they're experiencing it and seeing how they're thinking and feeling. And it's just good to remember that each one of us, it's just like a day at the park is not just a day at the park. Not necessarily.
Right. Yeah, and I feel
different.
like we have been talking, even in this podcast, about the concept of learning to know that you don't know everything through books. And this is such a great tool, like you said, especially for like younger kids. I mean, even for me, I love a good picture book. But for younger kids who may not be at the level of reading these complex stories with complex character, emotion, like developmental arcs, and can kind of see this straightforward lesson that the way you see it is almost never going to be the way somebody else sees it.
Yeah.
Which is a really important lesson to learn.
Yeah, and I even find myself in just reading this story, judging the characters.
Mm.
You know, like the mom. Why is she so, like, why are they portraying moms like that? You know, like,
Yeah.
like there's one illustration where the boy is in the park talking to the little girl, and it's like he's standing in the shadow of his mother.
Yeah.
You're like, what is that saying about mothers?
Mm.
You know, or am I that kind of mother?
Mm.
Like it so challenges even like just such a simple caricature of a mother type.
Yeah.
Like what is that like?
Yeah.
And it's curious too because, you know, if we sort of back out like the meta almost, but just like, you know, Anthony Browne has his own perspective too, you know, of what a day in the park would look like too. And so I wonder which of these characters that he's written does he relate the most to? Is it the little
That's
boy,
interesting.
you know? And what does that say about his,
Right.
you know, so it's like,
Yeah.
Trying to
it's
say.
interesting how, you know, even in trying to write other people's perspectives, you still kind of attribute a little bit of your perspective to it
Yeah.
in attempting to understand it, because that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
instead of
understand.
a snap judgment kind of about the person or their experience, because it does happen very quickly. We have these immediate thoughts about it, you know, but so maybe this is just like, this is good to see too, because, you know, it encourages me to ask questions,
Yeah.
for example.
Well, and I think one of the things that we've been talking about lately with like the Narnia books and the fantasy is just how beneficial it is sometimes to take yourself out of a real world example and put yourself into this like place where we can't bring our preconceived ideas. We don't
That's a
understand
good thought. Yeah.
what a land with talking animals could look like.
Right. Yeah.
And so we can like it like makes some of that stuff fall off
That's good.
and allows us to just receive the world as they present it.
Yeah.
But it's also
good.
really interesting as we move forward looking at other books in perspective on World War II. You know, like Peter and the Pevensies were British children sent off to the countryside. What does it look like for a similar aged boy in a different part of the world to experience that war?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
practicing being able to switch from different perspectives and look at things from different understandings is really helpful as a reader, but I think it's more helpful in just knowing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just like love this book because of course, you know, it's a children's book. It's targeted towards children, and you know, that's a really real developmental task for a child is learning how to see at all from someone else's perspective. But the way that he takes every single element of the book and makes it symbolic of someone else's perspective, like that helps all of us learn to see from other people's perspectives. And I think what it also trains us to do as readers is it helps us to take other people's stories and see more of the elements that are happening, you know, like with, you know, Peter and the Pevensey kids, and like to be able to see that they're like, you know, British kids coming from London, you know, we're assessing all the different elements. They're going to the countryside, you know, it's like these things that like impact. What are the things that impact their perspective and change them?
Yeah, that is important. Because when you meet somebody, there is a whole story behind them, and there's some way like to enter that story, but you have to sort of like let it. You can't. So that again, back to the snap judgments. You can't just immediately, you know, make a call on what kind of person you think this is. You know, based on how they're responding or thinking about something.
Yeah.
Or even
because
how
they
they
have-
look or talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
You know.
It's such a big story, just like us. I mean, each one of us individually have been through a whole slew of things that impact how we think and experience anything. Really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's so true.
Well, thank you for joining us for this podcast on Voices in the Park by Anthony Browne. We look forward to digging into other perspectives in our next podcast. I'll see you next time.
Thanks again for joining us on the Rooted Minds podcast. What do you think about the way Anthony Browne teaches perspective? Comment your thoughts below. But until next time, may you find joy, grace, and peace in the pages you